last week I forgot to do that. So we didn't have the sermon on the website. Today I have a sermon which is oddly titled, Christ at the Centre of the Margins, which doesn't seem to make much sense. However, here we are. We've focused this year on Christ being the centre of our lives. And as the theologian R.C. Sproul, who writes it so much better than me, says, Christianity involves a meeting with a holy God who forms the centre or core of human existence. The Christian faith is theocentric. God is not at the edge of Christians' lives, but at the very centre. God defines our entire life and worldview. God, and therefore Jesus, is our all in all. He's our focus in all of our life, not just the Sunday bit. We can't do the being of church unless Christ is the centre. In 1 Corinthians 3:11 it says, For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Paul sums it up that Jesus is so much the centre of our lives that he consumes us and we live in him and he lives through us. In Galatians 2:20 it says, I have been crucified with Christ and I no longer live, but Christ lives within me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. See, Jesus is our ultimate identity, ultimate model of finding our identity. He's the ultimate model for acceptance. He's the ultimate model of legitimacy from the Father. Now that we're halfway through the year, and this has been our theme all the way through the year, I hope that you've got it, that Jesus is the centre of our lives. If not, I'll start again in January.
He is.
But now I want to throw a cat among the pigeons. Because at the same time as we were learning that Christ is the centre of our lives, we have learned that Jesus Christ is at the margins of society. He's the centre of our lives, but he's at the margin of society. And if you look at the Gospels to see who he associated with, and if you look at the treatment he received at the hands of society, you understand what I mean. Jesus knows what it's like to be marginalised. He understands how it feels to have society shove you to the side, to not merely accept you, and in the end to be totally rejected. He can identify with life in the margins because God came to earth in the person of Jesus Christ. He arrived at the margins. He chose to arrive at the margins. And he chose to arrive there because that's where broken lives get mended. That's where prisoners get set free. That's where the poor hear the good news. Christ spent his time so much with the poor and disadvantaged and the outcast that he got himself a reputation. It says in Matthew 11:19, it says, the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they said, he's a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. He was accused of being a drunkard because he hung out with sinners. He hung out with drunkards. He was accused of being a glutton because he hung out with those who were sinning. He was accused of being friends to undesirables like tax collectors and sex workers. But Jesus had already laid out his plan for his purpose when he opened the scroll of Isaiah in the synagogue. And he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed go free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour. He was very particular about where his focus would lie. The famous missionary Stanley Jones explained the good news of the kingdom of God. The good news of the poor means the economically disinherited. Release for the captives means those who are socially and politically disinherited. Opening the eyes of the blind means the physically disinherited. The strengthening with forgiveness them that are bruised is the morally and spiritually disinherited. The year of the Lord's Jubilee is a new world beginning on the basis of a closer approximation of equality of opportunity for all. So if Christ is there in the margins of society and he is our centre, where should we be?
Now, here. In our centre.
Jesus in John 15:4 said, "Abide in me and I in you. As a branch can't bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me." So if the vine is at the margins of society and we're at the centre of society, we must be a very long tendril to attach back into that root. So I raise these questions for you to consider. Not now, but in time. Who in New Zealand are the economically disinherited? Who in New Zealand are the socially and politically disinherited? Who in New Zealand are the physically disinherited? Who in New Zealand are the morally and spiritually disinherited? And where in New Zealand is the inequality of opportunity for all? All of those are big questions. Lots of unpacking and lots of controversy when you start thinking about those categories. But remember to look past the easy answers because they are deep, deep issues in our society. It's the role of our church to determine, as we listen to God's direction for us, where we need to be spending our energies and bringing the good news to our society and carry out our God-appointed mission to this community. That's why we had the forum last Sunday after church. That's why we're having a forum today after church. To say, where should we be spending our energies with those people who God has a special heart for? That's a question we've been asking ourselves in this post-lockdown New Zealand. Where do we minister in New Zealand with the strength that God has given us? And whom do we minister to? Where is our focus? We're not without skills or talents or abilities, because these things are all God given to us. In this room are all the gifts and abilities that God needs for us to do our task. We may think, oh, we're missing so-and-so or this particular skill. Well, if it's missing, then probably God says it's not needed in this particular context. God has given us in this room everything that we need to achieve what God wants us to achieve in His kingdom here in Thames. John 14:12 says, "Very truly I tell you," this is Jesus, "whoever believes in me will do works that I have been doing, and they'll do even greater things than these because I'm going to the Father." Do you believe that we can actually do greater things than Jesus? Well, you say that, but I bet you don't.
Have we put our minds to it?
If you put our minds to it, that's right, that's not a classic. Do we believe God says that we can do greater things than He did?
Yes, if we put our minds to it.
But He says that. Jesus doesn't lie.
No.
We may think, well, I can't do anything. But Christians throughout the ages have done greater things. By going into the margins and doing great things for God. And some of these people I've spoken about before because I think they're great saints, if you like, of our faith, of community, going out in the community. And think of Father Damien, who ministered to the physically disinherited. In 1873, when there was no cure for leprosy, and they were sent to islands or colonies so that they wouldn't infect anybody else, he went to the isolated settlement in Kalaupapa in Hawaii, sometimes known as Molokai, where there were 816 lepers. And he worked with them for 16 years. In 1884, he realized that he'd caught leprosy himself, but he continued working with the people in that community. And he died of leprosy in 1889, aged 49 years old. That is going to the margins. And the margins cost him. Of course, it's hard to go past Mother Teresa and the Order of Missionaries of Charity, which was set up in the streets of Kolkata, working with the physically disinherited who were dying on the streets of Kolkata. Not to convert them, but just to give them peace in their dying times. There's a wonderful movie, if you're interested, called Letters from Mother Teresa, which Colleen and I have, if anyone wants to borrow it. It's really, really impactful about the cost of going out into working with the poor and the marginalised. In 1918 in New Zealand there was the flu epidemic that actually killed 50 million people worldwide. But there were 16 Roman Catholic sisters from the Sisters of Compassion in Wellington, and they set up a hospital and they nursed 91 men of all denominations. 54 of those men survived, 37 died. Many of the sisters contracted influenza, and one sister, Sister Natalie, died from influenza. Think about the combating of inequality. In New Zealand, the Women's Christian Temperance Union ran soup kitchens, rehabilitated women prisoners, ran night shelters, ran classes and set up a precursor to our kindergartens. But most notably, they fought for equality in the vote, so that women as well as men could vote. They were standing up against injustice and oppression and putting their hands and feet on that feeling. Think of the Christian chiefs Te Whiti and Tohu Kakahi, who stood up at Parihaka against the oppression of the English settlers in Taranaki, who were supported by the government to take the Māori land, and they said, enough. And think of the cost that cost them and their followers of Parihaka. I think I've spoken about that story before, and I could be. Here's one you probably don't know. Henare Mururu Taratara. He was a Māori Christian teacher at Otaki, and he went from Otaki, from the safety of Otaki, and he went to the battlefield of Tauranga at what's called Pukehinahina, which we know as Gate Park. And he set out a code of Christian ethics for the treatment of prisoners and of the wounded. So he's talking about how do we Māori treat British prisoners. He died in the so-called Battle of Te Aranga, which wasn't a battle at all, it was an ambush by the British, and in a few minutes they killed 120 Māori when the Māori weren't expecting it. And he died there. Think of the missionaries in New Zealand and their parent organisation, the Church Missionary Society in England, who fought against the debauchery and lawlessness of the hellhole of the Pacific, Kororareka, which we know as Russell. And they asked for a legal remedy to protect Māori. And that resulted in the Treaty of Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi. Think of the Christians who went into the slums of London and set up orphanages for thousands of orphaned children during the Industrial Revolution, and who ministered to the poor and dying in the East End of London, which was a hellhole. Think of the Christian woman Florence Nightingale, who went into the hospitals, the field hospitals of the Crimean War, to minister to the dead and dying and wounded. Think of New Zealand's first hospital. And that was set up by Christians at St. John's College in Auckland. Think of the Christians who set up and ran the Underground Railway in the USA, which took runaway slaves from the south and secreted them up to the north for freedom. Think about Christians like William Wilberforce, who stood up against the government of the day and saw the abolishment of the evil practice of slavery. Well, in fact, he didn't. He died just before it was enacted. And in this great group of esteemed saints, I want to add another couple that you will not know. We had friends in Invercargill called Brian and Yvonne Dixon. And they sold their house in a reputable suburb of Invercargill, and they moved and bought a house, an ex-state house, in Lithgow Street. Lithgow Street at that time was the Black Power and the Bungamoa were fighting open battles in the street. They were burning down each other's houses in that street. And Yvonne and Brian, he was a school teacher, and she was, I think she was the early childhood teacher. They moved into the street amongst the warring gangs to be a Christian presence in that place. Isaiah 55:6 says in Māori, Rapua a ihua, kei kitia ana ia, ka rangatia atu, kei tata ana mai ia. Seek the Lord where he may be found, and call on him when he is near. All these examples I've just given, and you can probably add hundreds of others, are people who went to the margins and worked for Jesus in the margins with people marginalised by society. It wasn't, they didn't go as colonialists to tell them how to do stuff. They didn't go in there saying, you poor people who know nothing, we're going to tell you how to do it. That's colonialism. But they went to minister and to be with and to live with those who were less fortunate. Because they recognised the God spark in each one of those people. There was a God spark in all of the people whom they ministered to. Christ said that ministry starts with the acknowledgement that you and I are more like than unlike the people to whom God has called us to minister. We repeat that because it's quite a tongue twister. Christ said that ministry starts with the acknowledgement that you and I are more alike than unlike the people to whom God has called us to minister. We are varied in experiences and genetics and other measurements of difference, aren't we? If you look around here, we've got all sorts of shapes and sizes and colours and stuff. Well, each of us are different because God made us individually. Why would we exclude other people because of their otherness, because of their difference?
Because it doesn't make any difference. If you are different to other people might think that you have common.
The mystery of community is precisely because it embraces all people, whatever their individual differences may be, and allows them to live together as brothers and sisters in Christ as sons and daughters of God. You know, sometimes it's easy to say this, but it gets tested every now and then. When I was at Bible college, we used to have a Wednesday morning chapel service, and all the students would trundle in there and their lecturers. And one Sunday, a guy wearing a black hoodie and black trousers and an overcoat with a bottle in a brown paper bag came and sat at the back of the chapel service, muttering to himself. Everybody ignored him, and he wandered off. Nobody followed up with him. Nobody went out to him. It was actually a student, and he was the object lesson for the sermon that day. And we felt so embarrassed when we found that out. In a church I attended in Rotorua, one morning service, there was a man clearly under some mental disability, came in and started engaging the minister who was preaching with all sorts of arguments. And when he elicited no response, he swore and walked out of the church in a huff. There was an uncomfortable silence. Nobody followed him out. Nobody went out to see how he was. Nothing. Just this uncomfortable silence. Until the lady said, I think we should pray. I wonder if a patched gang member walked into our service now, what we would do about it. Maybe one of the killer bees, maybe one of the mongrel mob. I don't think we have. Or maybe there's a black power here. I'm not sure, I haven't seen it.
We wouldn't let that person in.
I think that's a good gauge of whether we are with God at the margins. Are we prepared for our decorum to be challenged? Are we prepared for our love of order to be challenged? Of our nice, safe congregation? Are we prepared for it to be challenged? And the silly thing is, if gang members accept Christ, they become the best evangelists in the world because they're scared of no one. They would go up to anybody in the street. In Tokoroa we had some at the local apostolic church, and they were marvellous. They'd say, call across the street, the main street, Tokoroa, are you saved, brother? People would duck in the shops to avoid them. Those from a drug culture and from a gang background know what they've been saved from, and they are passionate about this changed life that they have. Are they rough around the edges? Oh yes. Are they on fire for God? Absolutely. Let's fill our churches with people who are sold out for the transformative power of Jesus, and let's see the church make a difference. But don't beat ourselves up about our past responses, but consider how we would react in the future. God has chosen to build His church through the instrumentality of bent and broken tools. It is our delusion of strength that gets us into trouble and causes us to form a ministry that is less Christ-centered and gospel-driven. I don't have it all together. You probably don't either. Yet God uses to outwork His plan through us. What a privilege. Even if it's scary and it's uncharted territory, God is with us. The early church welcomed people inside their community, knowing that the outsiders would experience acceptance and perhaps be inspired by the community's Christ-centered values. My two interns in Eastside before I came up here were two Māori women. Both of them came out of extreme domestic violence. One of them was the wife of a gang member. They could minister to people that I couldn't reach. They had empathy and araha for people who had been where they had been and brought new people into the church family. We need such people in our church. It's my hope as we move out to the margins to join Jesus, to reaching out to the people that society has discarded or downgraded or decided were not worth the investment. It's my hope that we would show people that they are worthy of love. That they're worthy of God's love, and that love is transformative. I'm going to show you a transformative power of God's story in the margins. It's an old story, it's been copied several times, so it looks really grainy, but it's a story of a former mongrel mob leader called Tūhoe Bruno Isaacs. And he wrote a book called Yeah. And it was sent to the launch of his book, which is called True Red. I met Tūhoe in Invercargill, and some of the people some of the people I know in Invercargill are ex-gang members, even great friends. They still wear colours, but the colours are for Christ. They still ride motorcycles, big Harleys, but it's a vehicle for them to know Christ. So I'm going to show you that video now of Tūhoe Isaacs.